Hello friends, and welcome back to the Dork Side. I'm the Dork on the Road, and today it's time to update my top 5 favorite recommended dual sport motorcycles for new riders. I'm the Dork on the Road, and I want to be your internet riding buddy, so please consider subscribing. It's been a few years since I made my first top 5 best beginner dual sport motorcycles video. We've been so lucky in the last few years to have had some brand new beginner-friendly dual sport bikes hit the market that I felt like it was probably time to update this list to include some of those newer, better choices for new riders. So these are my 5 favorite dual sport bikes for riders who are either brand new to riding altogether, or for riders who are brand new to off-road riding. Maybe you have some street riding experience, but you're transitioning to riding off-road. You want to check out all the power and majesty of dual sport motorcycles. These are the bikes I would recommend starting your search with. All the bikes on this list are easy for a brand new rider to handle. They're unintimidating, they're easy to ride, they're relatively inexpensive, reliable and cheap to maintain, and they're all bikes that are going to be comfortable for you as a beginner, but are going to have the capability and power that you can grow into them a little bit as your skills grow, so you're not going to get bored with it when you transition to an intermediate rider or a slightly better rider. But if you're a beginner dual sport rider who wants to get out and explore the woods, ride trails, ride around the city, do a little bit of highway, can't go wrong with any of the bikes on this list. I'm going to list them in order of easiest to ride to slightly less easy to ride, but they're all incredibly easy to ride bikes. Really the big difference, and the reason why I've listed them in the order that I have, is seat height. I'm going to start with the one with the lowest seat height and work towards the ones with the highest seat height, because not being able to get your feet down easily can be intimidating to a new rider. We'll start with number 5, which is no surprise to anyone who is looking for a beginner dual sport, who's done any research on beginner dual sports, or anyone who's watched my channel before, because it's a bike that I love, and that is the Yamaha TW200. It's a truly unique looking bike. It has a low seat height, it is easy to handle, it has great manageable power and ample traction thanks to its huge balloon-style ATV tires that are unique to this bike, and there are no other dual sports that I'm aware of that have a similar setup. So the TW200 is the most unique bike on this list. The T-Dubs is a 30-year-old bulletproof design. It's the only carbureted bike on this list. It's the least modern bike on this list, but I still think it bears considering because of its unique qualities and because it's such a low seat height and yet capable bike that it really will appeal, especially to shorter riders. You should give the TW200 a look. Here's the stats on the TW200. It has a 196cc carbureted engine, a 5-speed transmission, 6.3 inches of front suspension travel, and 5.9 inches of rear suspension travel, so that's small. That's about half what some of these other bikes have. Ground clearance of 10.4 inches, the seat height is 31.1 inches, the curb weight is 278 pounds, it has a 1.9 gallon fuel tank, and the manufacturer's suggested retail price on a TW200 is $46.99. Number 4 bike is the TW200's younger, taller brother, the Yamaha XT250. Unlike the T-Dubs, the XT250 is fuel injected, but it still maintains a relatively low seat height, which is something that's important for new riders, especially shorter riders, to think about. The XT250 is a much newer model. It's got fuel injection, it has front and rear disc brakes, but it's still one of the least intimidating bikes for new riders on the market. The XT250 is also slightly more expensive. It's about $500 more than the TW200. So that begs the question, why would anyone get the T-Dubs when the XT250 is so much more modern, more capable, and newer, and is only a little bit more? And I think it really comes down to which bike speaks to you more. Some people will look at the TW200 and fall in love. It's going to be the bike for them. Some people will look at the XT250 and that'll be the one for them. My suggestion is test ride them both if you're interested in one or the other, and that's easy enough to do because they're both Yamahas, so if they're in stock, you should be able to test ride both back to back, and then really just go with the one that speaks to you. That's my advice. Sometimes a bike makes sense when you get on it in a way that it doesn't when you look at the stats on paper, so I always recommend just test riding and find the one that feels good. Some stats on the XT250. It has a 249cc fuel-injected engine with a 5-speed transmission, 8.9 inches of front suspension travel, 7.1 inches of rear suspension travel, and a ground clearance of 11.2 inches. The seat height is 31.9 inches, the curb weight is 291 pounds, it has a fuel capacity of 2.6 gallons, and the new MSRP is $5,199. Number 3 best first dual sport motorcycle that I would recommend is the all-new Kawasaki Klx 2000. 230. I was lucky enough to take the KLX 230 for an extended test ride recently, and I came away very impressed with the bike. It was far more capable and fun than I was expecting for what is clearly designed to be an entry-level dual sport bike. I'll link that video for you if you're interested in learning more about what it feels like to ride the KLX 230, both on and off-road. I got it out on some gravel. That was really fun. In my experience, it's an easy to ride and very fun dual sport motorcycle that's fun for both new riders and experienced riders. I had a great time on the thing. So another big advantage to the KLX 230 is that everything else on this list seems to be a little hard to get right now, and at least the dealership that I went to had ample KLX 230s available, so they seem to be more easy to get your hands on at this moment. Here are the stats on the KLX 230. It's got a 233cc fuel-injected engine, a 6-speed transmission, 8.7 inches of front suspension travel, and 8.8 inches of rear suspension travel. The ground clearance is 10.4 inches. The seat height is a little higher than the other two at 34.8 inches. It weighs 293 pounds, has a 2-gallon fuel tank, and retails for $45.99 for the non-ABS model and $48.99 for the ABS model. Number 2 on the list is the Honda CRF 300L. I have not yet had the opportunity to test ride this bike, although I think I'm going to get a chance very soon, but I spent a lot of time, several years, on its predecessor, the CRF 250L. It was my first dual sport. It was a bike that made me fall in love with dual sport riding. I really enjoyed it. It's a bike I'm sad that is no longer in my garage. And the CRF 300L just basically takes everything that's great about the 250L and makes it better. Unique to the 300L is the Rally model. The Rally adds a bigger fairing for more highway wind protection, a much bigger gas tank, and costs a little bit more. But if you're someone that's definitely going to spend a lot of time on the highway, you're going to be riding out to places where you're going to be riding off-road, or you want to use it as a highway bike and do more adventure-style stuff, then the Rally is definitely worth considering, and it's the only model on this list that has anything. In fact, it's the only dual sport that I'm aware of that has anything remotely like it, so the Rally's worth checking out. Stats on the Honda CRF 300L. It's got a 286cc fuel-injected engine with a 6-speed transmission, 10.2 inches of front and rear suspension travel, and 11.2 inches of ground clearance. The seat height is 34.7 inches. It weighs 309 pounds, has a 2.1 gallon gas tank, and the MSRP for the non-ABS model is $52.49, for the ABS model is $55.49, and for the Rally, it's $59.99. And number 1, although it's pretty much a tie because these last two are basically incredibly similar with a few minor differences, but the number 1 dual sport that I would recommend for brand new riders, at least those that are okay with a little bit taller seat height and slightly more engine performance, is the KLX 300. I was lucky enough to take the KLX 300 SM on a test ride recently. I'll link that video for you, and the only difference between the SM and the regular KLX 300 is that the SM has street tires and a little bit smaller wheels. So I think I got a good sense for the bike, and I have to say I was pretty impressed with it. It did okay on the highway. Feels like it's going to be really capable off-road. It's still a beginner-friendly, sort of welcoming, forgiving motorcycle for you to learn on and grow into. And if you're willing to spend a little bit more money and okay with a little bit taller seat height, I think the KLX 300 or the CRF 300L is a bike that you'll keep for a long time, even when you're not a beginner rider anymore. The differences between the CRF 300L and the KLX 300 are not huge. The KLX has a slightly bigger engine and slightly lower weight, and the CRF has longer suspension travel, more ground clearance, and a slightly lower seat height. One big advantage of the KLX over the CRF is fully adjustable suspension, which the CRF doesn't have. It's maybe not something that a brand new rider is going to care about as much, but as you grow into your skills and start wanting to take on tougher terrain, the ability to dial in that suspension without modifying it is something that you might really appreciate. For me, at least, that's the tiebreaker between the KLX and the 300L, and if I had to pick one or the other, I'd probably go with the KLX because of the adjustable suspension. Now, I'm saying that having not ridden the 300L. If I rode the 300L and it felt better to me, I would go with it. I think it all comes down to which bike, when you swing your leg over and ride, feels best to you, and all these other differences, we're just nitpicking tiny differences. They're all going to be capable and easy to ride bikes. Here's some stats on the KLX 300. It has a 292cc fuel-injected engine with a 6-speed transmission, 10 inches of front suspension travel, 9.1 inches of rear suspension travel, and 10.8 inches of ground clearance. The seat height on the KLX 300 is 35.2 inches, the bike weighs 302 pounds, has a 2-gallon fuel capacity, and retails for $55.99 for the green model or $57.99 for the camel gray, which is the much cooler one and the one that I would definitely pay $200 more for, even though it's dumb that they charge extra. What's up with that, Kawasaki? If you're in the market for your first dual sport bike, I would strongly encourage you to check out all 5 of these bikes. Test ride all of them if you can, because the differences between them, while significant on paper, are not that significant once you swing your leg over the bike and start riding. They're all capable, they're all reliable, they're all easy to ride, they're all gonna do what you want them to do and give you room to grow into the motorcycle, and you can't go wrong with any of the choices on this list. Another consideration is availability and used availability. The last 3 bikes are all brand new. You can't buy them used, but you can find used XT250s and TW200s out there and save yourself some money. So all these things are worth considering, and sometimes it comes down to just which bike you can get your hands on first. If you have any questions about any of these bikes or have any dual sport beginner questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. If there's a bike that should be on this list that I've missed, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion. But for now, and as always, I just want to say thank you very much for watching, and please do not forget to be excellent to each other. Thank you.
Excellent!